I wasn't sure what made me agree to go to my neighbor's son's birthday party. Maybe it was the insistence of polite obligation, or maybe I was just curious. The morning had been ordinary, the sun pouring through my window as I adjusted my dress in front of the mirror, trying to decide if a soft floral pattern was too much or just right. I grabbed my purse and stepped outside, the familiar hum of the neighborhood greeting me. Children ran around with balloons, laughter echoing through the street, and I could see parents gathered in small clusters, exchanging stories and jokes. When I arrived at the house, the front yard was alive with energy. Colorful banners waved gently in a breeze, and the smell of baked goods mingled with freshly cut grass. I smiled politely at familiar faces, nodding to neighbors I had known for years. It was easy to get lost in the crowd, to let the noise distract me from the quiet restlessness I felt inside. I chatted briefly with a few parents, exchanging pleasantries, and grabbed a plate of snacks, letting the small talk wash over me. Then I noticed him, James. He wasn't the child celebrating the birthday, of course, but the older brother, standing slightly apart from the crowd. There was something about the way he watched me, not with obvious attention, but with a subtle focus that made my heart skip for no reason I could articulate. Our eyes met for a fleeting moment, and he offered a small, knowing smile. "Hey," he said casually when I approached, "I saved a spot for you inside. Come have some food in my room." The invitation caught me off guard. Inside his room? For a moment, I hesitated, the thrill of curiosity mixing with a whisper of guilt. Yet there was something in his tone that felt inviting, not threatening, and I found myself following him. The door clicked softly behind us, sealing us off from the sounds of the party outside. He gestured toward a small table he had set up, food arranged neatly and thoughtfully. "I thought it would be nicer here, more private," he said, his voice low but not too close. I smiled politely, a little nervous, and accepted the plate he offered me. There was a strange intimacy in the gesture, a care that went beyond mere hospitality. We began to eat, making small conversation. James asked about my day, my interests, and even joked lightly about the chaos outside. I laughed, the tension easing slightly as we shared a few stories about our families, our childhood memories, and the small surprises life threw our way. Occasionally, our hands brushed when passing a plate or a glass, fleeting touches that left me aware of a subtle electricity in the air. There was a quiet thrill in being noticed, in feeling seen by someone in a way that seemed personal and intentional. I felt a warmth I hadn't expected to feel, a mixture of excitement and apprehension. As I listened to James speak, I noticed the way he leaned slightly forward when telling a story, the glint of amusement in his eyes, and the easy confidence in his gestures. For a moment, I caught myself imagining what it would be like if life could feel like this more often, if these small moments of attention could stretch beyond the walls of this private room. But I shook the thought away, reminding myself that I was a guest at a birthday party, that this was merely a fleeting encounter, and yet the sensation of being in his presence lingered longer than I expected. As the plate emptied and James offered me a refill, I realized that the simple act of eating together had become something more, a quiet, shared experience, intimate in its subtlety. There was no rushing, no expectation, only the careful attention of two people finding a brief connection amidst the backdrop of a noisy celebration. The sound of laughter and music outside reminded me of the world waiting beyond the closed door, and yet for those few minutes it felt as if time had slowed, giving space for something unspoken to exist. And though I knew the party would call me back soon, I found myself quietly hoping that the moment could stretch a little longer, that this small bubble of shared attention could hold just a little more before reality intruded again. The room felt quieter now, the sounds of the party muted behind the closed door. James and I continued talking as if the rest of the world didn't exist. He asked about my hobbies, about books I liked, and I found myself opening up more than I had expected. There was something easy in his presence, a way he listened that made each word feel important. My laughter came more freely, and I noticed the warmth in his smile every time I responded. At one point, he shared a story about his own childhood, a memory of a summer afternoon spent by the lake with his younger siblings. His eyes sparkled as he spoke, and I could see the genuine joy behind his words. I responded with a story from my own past, something small but personal, and he leaned in slightly to listen, nodding with sincere interest. The subtle closeness made my pulse quicken not from fear, but from the quiet thrill of being noticed so fully. There were moments when our hands brushed while passing food or glasses, each touch lingering just a heartbeat longer than necessary. It was a small electric sensation that left me slightly breathless, though nothing overtly happened. I realized then that attraction wasn't always about bold gestures. Sometimes it existed in the quiet, shared moments that made ordinary actions feel charged. James laughed softly at one of my stories, and I noticed the gentle way his eyes held mine. "You have a way of seeing the world differently," he said, almost as if revealing a secret. His voice was low, calm, and reassuring. I felt a warmth spread through me, an unfamiliar but pleasant sensation. It was thrilling to be seen, not just for appearances, but for the little things I rarely let anyone notice. We continued to share small jokes, light teasing that felt intimate in a way words alone could not capture. Occasionally, I caught myself staring for just a moment longer than I intended, noticing the subtle way he gestured, the soft tone of his voice. Each smile, each glance, felt like an invitation into a space I wasn't sure I should enter, but couldn't help but linger in. At some point, the conversation shifted, naturally, to more personal topics, dreams, regrets, and the little things we longed for in life. James's eyes softened, and I felt an unusual comfort in revealing a part of myself I usually kept private. I sensed the same openness from him, a trust that made our brief encounter feel more meaningful than the casual party outside ever could. There was a moment when he joked about how easily distracted children could be, and I found myself leaning slightly closer, laughing at his observation. Our shoulders brushed lightly, an accidental touch that neither of us pulled away from immediately. It was electric in a quiet way, a silent acknowledgement that the moment between us was charged with something unspoken. I knew, deep down, that boundaries existed, that we were both aware of the limits, yet the attraction hung in the air like an unspoken promise. It wasn't about doing something forbidden, it was about feeling alive, noticed, and appreciated in a way I hadn't realized I craved. Each word, each glance, each small laugh created a rhythm that made the room feel smaller, more intimate, a private world hidden from the chaos beyond the door. Eventually the food was gone, and James refilled our glasses. I realized that time had passed more quickly than I noticed. The party outside was still ongoing, but in here, the world felt suspended, a pause where connection mattered more than noise or distractions. I felt a strange mix of guilt and excitement. Guilt because I knew this attention was fleeting, excitement because it reminded me that connection could exist anywhere, in small moments, quietly, intensely. As we talked, I found myself lingering just a little longer with each glance, with each laugh, savoring the subtle intimacy that didn't need to be defined to be felt. It was a delicate tension, the kind that made the heart beat faster, the kind that existed in the space between words and gestures, the brush of hands, the softness of a smile. I understood then that attraction didn't always need to cross lines to be real. It could exist in the quiet, in the small moments, and still leave a lasting impression. By the time I heard a faint noise from the other side of the door, reminder of the ongoing party, I knew it was time to leave, at least for now. And yet, as I prepared to step back into the larger world, I felt a lingering awareness of what had just happened, a subtle connection that would stay with me longer than I expected. As I stepped back into the sound of laughter and chatter, the warmth from our private moment lingered like a soft echo. The bright decorations and joyful voices outside reminded me that the party was still in full swing. But my mind kept returning to James, the way he had listened, the small gestures that had made me feel seen, even for just a short while. There was a strange combination of exhilaration and guilt curling in my chest, a recognition that some connections, even fleeting ones, could leave a lasting impression. I walked slowly through the crowd, exchanging polite smiles with neighbors and nodding at familiar faces. But my attention kept flicking back to that closed door, to the quiet intimacy we had shared behind it. It was not the bold kind of romance one saw in movies, no overt passion or declarations, just a subtle, electric closeness that seemed to exist in every glance and every small touch. And yet it had left me aware of desires and feelings I rarely allowed myself to acknowledge. James appeared soon after, giving a small nod and a soft smile as he passed by. There was no awkwardness, no sense that boundaries had been crossed. Instead, there was understanding, a shared secret that existed in the delicate space between us. His glance conveyed appreciation and respect, and in that I found both comfort and temptation. I could feel my pulse quicken, but this time it wasn't just curiosity, it was admiration for someone who seemed to see me in ways most people did not. As the party went on, I found a quiet spot near the window, reflecting on the brief yet intense connection. I realized that moments like these, small yet meaningful, were what gave life its subtle spark. There was no need for dramatic gestures or forbidden acts. The intimacy existed in the shared laughter, in the quiet understanding, in the simple fact that someone had taken the time to truly notice me. My thoughts drifted back to James's words, the way he had made me feel comfortable, appreciated, and even desired in a gentle way. It was a lesson in restraint, in enjoying the thrill of attraction without needing to cross lines. I understood now that connection could exist without complication, that attention and care could be as powerful as any overt romantic act. The party slowly wound down, children tired and happy, parents exchanging farewells. I said my goodbyes, feeling the normal politeness of departure mixed with a bittersweet awareness of the intimacy I was leaving behind. James walked me to the door, and for a moment our hands brushed lightly, a fleeting touch, yet it carried the weight of everything we hadn't said. There was no need for more. The moment was complete in its subtlety, perfect in its restraint. As I stepped outside into the evening air, I felt a sense of empowerment and clarity. The thrill of attention, the electric tension of a shared secret, had not drawn me into something reckless. Instead, it reminded me of my own desires and boundaries, of the excitement that could exist in restraint, and of the power of a quiet connection that left the heart full without compromise. I walked home slowly, savoring the cool breeze, letting my thoughts linger on the brief encounter. It was not a story of overt infidelity, but a story of human connection, of noticing and being noticed, of subtle attraction, and of understanding one's own heart. I smiled softly, knowing that some experiences, even brief and unspoken, could change the way one saw the world, and perhaps even themselves. That night, as I lay in bed, my mind wandered back to James, to the quiet, shared moments, and to the laughter and soft conversation that had made me feel alive in a way I hadn't in years. It was a memory I would carry, a reminder that intimacy didn't always require crossing lines, that desire could exist in its most elegant form, and that even a short encounter could leave a lasting impression, one that was safe, respectful, and yet deeply stirring. In the end, I realized that sometimes the most meaningful stories are not those of grand gestures, but of small, heartfelt connections, moments where two people feel truly seen, even if only for a fleeting instant. And as sleep finally claimed me, I smiled at the thought that life was full of such moments, waiting quietly behind ordinary doors, ready to surprise those who were open to them.